Silence is often mistaken for indifference, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful messages a person can send. When someone chooses not to reach out, not to speak, and not to acknowledge your presence directly, they are communicating something profound, whether they realize it or not. And while it may seem frustrating, even painful, to be on the receiving end of this silence, it is crucial to recognize that their lack of action is an action in itself. It speaks volumes. It tells you everything you need to know. But the question is, are you listening? Are you willing to hear what is not being said? It is natural to wonder why someone who watches you from a distance refuses to reach out. It creates a sense of confusion, a whirlwind of unanswered questions. You may find yourself replaying old conversations, analyzing past interactions, searching for a sign, a hint, anything that could explain why they are still present in the shadows but absent in direct connection. You may even convince yourself that their silence is temporary, that they are hesitating, that any day now they will come forward with the words you've been waiting to hear. But time passes and nothing changes. They keep watching. They never speak. And this cycle continues, leaving you trapped in a loop of expectation and disappointment. This is where the power of silence reveals itself. When a person truly values you, they do not hesitate to engage with you. They do not sit back and observe your life like an outsider looking through a window. They do not leave you with doubts and uncertainties. Instead, they show up, they communicate, they express their intentions clearly. But when someone chooses to remain in the background, watching but never participating, it is not a sign of deep admiration. It is a sign of their own internal conflicts, their own emotional limitations, or worse, their own indifference, disguised as passive interest. Many people mistake this passive behavior for something meaningful. They assume that if someone is still watching, still keeping an eye on them, it must mean that they care, that they miss them, that they are struggling with their own emotions and just need time before they reach out. But this assumption is dangerous because it keeps you emotionally invested in someone who has already shown you that they are unwilling to invest in you. It places you in a position of waiting, of hoping, of analyzing their every move, when in reality, their actions, or rather their lack of action, should be the only thing you need to see clearly. It is easy to believe that silence is simply a delay, that it is only a matter of time before they come forward and explain everything. But what if silence is not a delay? What if it is the answer? What if the silence is not about their inability to speak, but about their unwillingness to? Because when someone truly values your presence in their life, they do not leave you questioning where you stand. They do not force you to search for hidden meanings in their actions. They do not make you feel like an afterthought. There is something profoundly liberating about realizing that silence is a choice. It is not an accident. It is not a misunderstanding. It is an intentional decision. Whether it stems from their own pride, their own emotional unavailability, or their own selfishness, the result remains the same. You are left in a position where you are giving your energy to someone who refuses to meet you halfway. And that realization should be enough to break the illusion. Silence often comes with a false sense of hope. You may find yourself justifying their distance. You may tell yourself that they are going through something, that they are afraid to speak, that they are waiting for the right moment. But how long will you hold on to that belief before you recognize that their silence is not about external circumstances? It is about priority. When someone wants to talk to you, they will. When someone wants to be in your life, they will find a way. When someone genuinely values you, they do not keep you in the dark, wondering Yet the most challenging part of this realization is accepting it without feeling resentment. It is tempting to view their silence as a game, as a tactic meant to provoke a reaction from you, and sometimes it is. Sometimes people watch from a distance because they want to maintain control, because they want to see if you will reach out first, because they want to keep you emotionally tied to them without making any real effort. But regardless of the reason, the response should be the same. Detachment. Not bitterness, not anger, just pure, unshakable detachment. When you stop interpreting silence as a puzzle to solve and start seeing it as a statement in itself, you free yourself from the emotional weight of waiting. You stop wondering when or if they will speak. You stop scanning their actions for signs of unspoken feelings. You stop allowing their passive presence to dictate your emotions. Because the truth is, if someone truly cares about you, if they truly value you, they will never put you in a position where you have to guess. Silence is a message. And the moment you recognize it as one, instead of filling in the blanks with your own emotions, you reclaim your power. Because when you stop searching for meaning in someone else's absence, you start finding meaning in your own presence. Just because someone is watching you doesn't mean they care about you the way you think they do. It doesn't mean they regret their choices, and it certainly doesn't mean they're planning to reach out. Observation is not the same as love, nor is it a sign of genuine attachment. It's easy to fall into the trap of believing that their silent attention holds weight, that their presence in the background of your life is proof that they still feel something. But the truth is, people watch for many reasons, none of which have anything to do with valuing you in the way you deserve. There is a strange phenomenon where people hold on to things they don't truly want. They don't want to commit, they don't want to invest, they don't want to make the effort, but they also don't want to let go completely. They want access, but not responsibility. They want the illusion of closeness without the reality of effort. This is why someone can keep tabs on you, can watch your every move, yet still refuse to engage. They are feeding their curiosity, their ego, their sense of control, not their heart. It's a harsh realization, but an important one. Attachment is often one-sided. The fact that you feel a connection does not mean they feel the same way. The fact that you are deeply affected by their absence does not mean they feel your absence just as intensely. You may be spending hours thinking about why they haven't reached out, replaying old memories, wondering if they miss you, if they regret leaving, if they still think about you the way you think about them. Meanwhile, they could be watching you with no real depth of emotion, no intention to reconnect, no genuine sense of loss. People hold on to familiarity. They like to know they still have a place in your mind, that they can return if they choose to. It is human nature to be drawn to what is known, even if there is no real desire to return to it. This is why an ex-partner, an old friend, or someone who once played a significant role in your life can keep watching from afar without ever reaching out. It is a form of passive possession. They don't want you, but they don't want to fully release you either. And here's the mistake most people make. They confuse being watched with being wanted. They think that if someone still checks in on them, still keeps an eye on their life, it must mean they care. It must mean they are struggling with their feelings. It must mean they will eventually come back. But what if they aren't struggling at all? What if they are simply indulging their own ego? What if their curiosity has nothing to do with love and everything to do with their own need for reassurance? This is where many people find themselves stuck, believing that the mere act of being observed is a sign of lingering attachment. They wait for a message that never comes. They overanalyze every like, every view, every interaction. They interpret silence as hesitation instead of finality. They tell themselves stories about what the other person must be feeling, instead of accepting what their actions or lack thereof clearly reveal. What most people fail to see is that real attachment is active, not passive. When someone truly values you, they don't sit in the background watching from a distance, giving you just enough attention to keep you wondering, but never enough to give you certainty. No, they show up. They make an effort. They engage. They don't force you to question where you stand. But when someone refuses to reach out, when they choose to remain a spectator instead of a participant, they are telling you exactly how much space you hold in their life. And yet, so many people ignore this reality because it is painful to accept. It is easier to believe in potential than to accept the truth. It is easier to tell yourself that they are afraid, that they are conflicted, that they are waiting for the right moment, than to face the reality that if they truly cared, they wouldn't hesitate. But how long can you keep making excuses for someone else's lack of effort before you realize that you are the only one holding on? It is a dangerous game to tie your emotions to the silent presence of someone who refuses to step forward. Because what happens is you start adjusting your actions based on them. You start posting certain things in hopes that they'll react. You start making moves not for yourself, but to trigger a response from them. You start crafting your life around the possibility that they are watching, instead of living fully for yourself. And in doing so, you lose. Because while you are hoping for validation, they are simply observing, unaffected, unbothered, unchanged. The only way to break free from this illusion is to recognize that being watched is not the same as being valued. A person can observe your life out of habit, out of boredom, out of guilt, or even out of jealousy, but none of those things mean they truly care. None of those things mean they will ever take action. And the moment you stop mistaking their passive attention for genuine connection, you free yourself from the weight of their presence. The moment you allow someone's silent presence to dictate your emotions, you give them control over your worth. It happens subtly at first. You notice that they are still watching, still paying attention from a distance, yet they never reach out. You tell yourself that this must mean something, that there is a reason they have not completely disappeared. You begin searching for hidden meanings in their actions, convincing yourself that their silence is temporary, that at some point they will say something, do something, make a move, but as time passes, nothing changes. They continue to watch, and you continue to wait, unknowingly placing yourself in a cycle where you are giving more energy to their inaction than to your own growth. What most people fail to see is that waiting for someone to acknowledge your worth is a trap. It places you in a position where you are constantly seeking validation from someone who has already shown you that they are unwilling to give it. Every time you wonder why they haven't reached out, every time you look for signs that they still care, you are reinforcing the idea that their recognition of you is more important than your recognition of yourself. You are giving them space in your mind, space in your emotions, space in your life, without them even asking for it. And here's the harsh truth. If someone truly saw your worth, if they truly valued you, they would not put you in a position where you have to question it. They would not allow you to sit in uncertainty, wondering why they won't speak, why they won't acknowledge you, why they are content watching from afar while you struggle with their absence. Real appreciation is active, not passive. A person who values you does not keep you in the background of their life, observing but never engaging. A person who values you steps forward, makes their presence known, and treats you with the clarity and certainty that you deserve. But when you allow someone's silence to make you feel like you are not enough, you are giving them power over your emotions. You are allowing their decision to stay distant to affect your self-worth. You are measuring your value based on their actions instead of your own. And this is a dangerous place to be. because it means that you are placing your happiness, your confidence, your sense of self in the hands of someone who does not care enough to protect it. Think about what it means to be an option rather than a priority. Being an option means that your presence in someone's life is not essential to them. It means that they can take you or leave you, that they can watch you from a distance but never feel the need to step forward and claim their place beside you. It means that you are something they keep in the background, something they acknowledge only when it is convenient for them. And yet so many people settle for this treatment because they believe that being watched is better than being forgotten. They convince themselves that as long as the other person is still paying attention in some way, there is still hope, still a chance, still a possibility. But what is the cost of holding on to that hope? How much of your energy is being drained by someone who refuses to show up for you? How much of your time is spent analyzing their actions instead of focusing on your own life? How many moments of happiness are you sacrificing because you are too busy waiting for someone else to validate you? This is the true danger of making yourself an option. It keeps you trapped in a space where you are constantly seeking instead of thriving. When you finally recognize that you are not an option, that you should never have to beg for someone's attention or wonder where you stand, everything changes. You stop giving your energy to people who do not deserve it. You stop allowing their inaction to affect your emotions. You stop believing that their passive interest is proof of anything meaningful. Instead, you begin to focus on yourself. You start to see that your value does not depend on someone else's recognition. You begin to realize that the energy you are wasting on waiting could be used to build something far greater. Your own happiness, your own success, your own sense of purpose. There is a powerful shift that happens when you stop being available to people who treat you like an afterthought. The moment you decide that you will no longer wait for someone to acknowledge your worth, you take back control. You no longer need them to reach out, to validate, to confirm what you already know deep inside. You are more than enough. And when you reach that level of self-assurance, when you finally understand that you are not an option but a priority to yourself, something incredible happens. The people who once ignored you, who once treated you as an afterthought, who once assumed you would always be there, start to realize that they no longer have the same power over you. And in that moment, they lose access to you, not because they stop watching, but because you stop caring. Emotional detachment is a skill, a discipline, and a necessity when dealing with people who refuse to give you clarity. It is the ability to separate your self-worth from someone's lack of action. It is the process of reclaiming your power by refusing to let their silence dictate your emotions. Most people struggle with this because they confuse detachment with indifference. They think that in order to detach, they must stop feeling, stop caring, stop remembering. But detachment is not about shutting down your emotions. It is about mastering them. It is about acknowledging what you feel while refusing to let those feelings control you. It is about understanding that you do not need closure from someone else to move forward. You give yourself closure. Many people remain emotionally tied to someone who refuses to engage because they are still holding on to hope. They replay old conversations in their minds, analyze past actions, and convince themselves that if they wait long enough, the person watching from a distance will eventually step forward. They believe that if they just give it time, something will change. But waiting is a trap. Waiting keeps you stuck in a cycle where your emotions are dependent on another person's decisions. A cycle where you are constantly looking for signs, for messages, for proof that they still care. This is the opposite of detachment. This is emotional bondage. Detachment begins the moment you decide that your peace is more important than their inconsistency. It begins when you make the conscious decision to prioritize your emotional well-being over your attachment to someone who refuses to meet you where you are. It is an active process, a daily commitment to choosing yourself over the need for external validation. At first, it feels difficult because your mind has been conditioned to seek their attention, to crave their acknowledgement, to find comfort in the hope that they will return. But over time, as you practice the discipline of detachment, you start to see how much lighter you feel, how much more freedom you have when you no longer tie your emotions to someone who refuses to be present. One of the biggest obstacles to detachment is the illusion of unfinished business. People believe that they cannot move on because they never got an explanation, never received an apology, never had a final conversation. They convince themselves that as long as there is no proper closure, they must remain emotionally invested. But here's the truth. Closure is not given, it is created. You do not need someone else to tie up the loose ends for you. You do not need an explanation from them to understand what you already know deep inside. The way they left, the way they treated you, the way they continue to watch but never reach out. That is your closure. Their silence is an answer in itself. Detachment also requires a shift in focus. The more energy you give to them, whether through thoughts, emotions, or actions, the stronger your attachment becomes. Every time you check if they have viewed your story, every time you wonder why they haven't texted, every time you replay memories, you are reinforcing their presence in your mind. This is why detachment must be intentional. It means redirecting your focus toward yourself, toward your own growth, toward your own healing. It means breaking the habit of checking for their attention and replacing it with habits that build your confidence, your self-worth, and your peace of mind. One of the most powerful ways to detach is to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing their absence as something personal, see it as a reflection of who they are, not of your worth. Instead of interpreting their silence as rejection, recognize it as redirection. Instead of feeling abandoned, realize that you have been freed from someone who was never fully present in the first place. The way people treat you is a reflection of them, not of you. Their inability to show up for you, to communicate, to engage, these are their limitations, not yours. And once you truly internalize this truth, their actions stop affecting you in the same way. Detachment also involves setting clear emotional boundaries. This means recognizing when your thoughts and feelings are pulling you back into attachment and making the conscious decision to break the cycle. It means catching yourself when you start to overanalyze their behavior and reminding yourself that their actions are no longer your concern. It means refusing to entertain thoughts of what if and maybe one day, because these thoughts keep you emotionally tied to someone who has already made their decision. People often fear detachment because they equate it with loss. They think that by letting go, they are admitting defeat, that they are giving up on something that still has potential. But the reality is that detachment is not about loss. It is about freedom. It is about reclaiming the energy that you have been pouring into someone who has not reciprocated it. It is about releasing the weight of unspoken words, unanswered questions, and unfulfilled expectations. It is about breaking free from the invisible chains that have kept you emotionally stuck. The beauty of detachment is that once you master it, you become untouchable. No one's silence can shake you. No one's inconsistency can disturb your peace. No one's passive attention can make you question your worth. You reach a point where you no longer need their validation, where their presence or absence makes no difference to your happiness. And that is the ultimate power, not in making them reach out, but in no longer caring whether they do or not. From someone who silently watches but never reaches out is not just about moving on. It is about reclaiming your power. restoring your emotional balance and reshaping the way you see yourself. When someone lingers in the background of your life without making an effort to connect, it creates an emotional weight that can be difficult to carry. Their presence, even in silence, keeps you tethered to the past, constantly wondering what their attention means, why they are still watching, and whether they will ever take action. But healing is not about waiting for answers from them. It is about finding clarity within yourself. It is about realizing that their silent observation has nothing to do with your value and everything to do with their own unresolved emotion. One of the first steps in healing is acknowledging the emotional impact of their passive presence. Many people suppress their feelings, convincing themselves that they are unbothered, while in reality, their emotions are still deeply entangled in the situation. Healing requires honesty. It requires you to face the lingering pain, the questions left unanswered, the moments of self-doubt that creep in when you realize they are still watching but refusing to engage. By confronting these emotions rather than avoiding them, you begin the process of breaking free. You start to understand that what hurts is not their absence, but the illusion of their presence. The false hope that their attention means something, when in reality, it is just a shadow of what could have been. Healing also requires a shift in focus. When you constantly check to see if they are watching, when you analyze their behavior, when you allow their inaction to affect your emotions, you are giving them space in your mind and heart that they no longer deserve. Every thought you give to them is energy taken away from your own growth. The process of healing begins when you consciously redirect that energy back to yourself. Instead of focusing on their actions, you focus on your own. Instead of waiting for them to validate your worth, you affirm it yourself. Instead of wondering why they won't reach out, you ask yourself why you are still allowing their silence to hold power over you. There is a moment in healing where you realize that closure is not something you get from another person. It is something you give yourself. People spend years waiting for an explanation, an apology, a conversation that will bring them peace. But true closure does not come from external validation. It comes from accepting what is. It comes from recognizing that their inability to step forward is not a reflection of you, but of them. It comes from understanding that you do not need them to acknowledge your worth for it to exist. You do not need their words to justify your emotions. You do not need their presence to confirm that you are important. You were always enough, with or without their recognition. One of the most powerful steps in healing is breaking the subconscious attachment to their attention. When someone watches from a distance but never reaches out, they are still occupying space in your life, even if indirectly. Their presence lingers, keeping you connected in ways you may not even realize. This is why healing requires a deliberate choice to cut off the invisible ties that keep you bound to them. This means removing the subtle reminders of their existence, no longer checking if they viewed your posts, no longer allowing yourself to replay memories, no longer interpreting their passive attention as something meaningful. It means making a conscious decision to detach, to reclaim your emotional energy, to stop looking back at someone who has chosen not to be present. As you heal, you begin to notice a shift. The emotional weight starts to lift. The thoughts that once consumed you begin to fade. The grip they had on your mind weakens. And for the first time in a long time, you feel free. You start to see yourself not through the lens of their actions, but through the truth of your own worth. You begin to focus on your own path, your own growth, your own happiness. And in that process, something incredible happens. You stop caring whether they are watching or not. Their attention, once something that held power over you, becomes meaningless. You no longer need their validation. You no longer seek their acknowledgement. You are whole on your own. Healing is not a single moment, but a journey. Some days will be easier than others. There will be moments when you feel completely free and moments when the past tries to pull you back. But each time you choose yourself, each time you prioritize your peace, each time you remind yourself that you deserve more than someone's passive attention, you take another step forward. You reclaim another piece of yourself. You prove to yourself that you were never dependent on their presence. You are simply learning how to stand fully in your own. The most beautiful part of healing is the realization that their silence was never about you. It was about them. Their inability to reach out, their choice to stay in the background, their unwillingness to step forward. It was never a reflection of your worth. It was their own fears, their own insecurities, their own inability to be present in a meaningful way. And once you truly understand this, once you internalize the fact that their actions do not define you, you set yourself free. You are no longer waiting for them to reach out. You are no longer searching for signs in their silence. You are no longer tied to the idea of what could have been. You are simply moving forward, stronger, wiser, and completely in control of your own happiness.